I first moved into the apartment, I thought I'd lucked out. Rent was cheap, utilities were included, and it was walking distance from campus. The only catch was that I'd be sharing it with another girl named Kelsey. She already lived there when I moved in. The landlord said she was quiet and kept to herself, which sounded perfect. When I met her, she seemed totally normal. She was about my age, mid-20s, with short brown hair and this blank, almost polite smile that never really reached her eyes. The kind of person you couldn't read. Still, she helped me carry my boxes inside, offered me water, and even pointed out where the good grocery store was. The apartment itself was a little dated. Creaky floors, flickering hallway light, the usual stuff. But it was clean. Kelsey's room was on the left, mine on the right, and we shared a small kitchen and living room. She worked evenings at a vet clinic, so I didn't see her much those first few weeks. Sometimes I'd wake up and see she'd already left for work. Other times, I'd get home to find her sitting on the couch, eating quietly, eyes on the muted TV. It wasn't until about a month in that I started noticing weird things. The first time, I woke up around 2 a.m. to the sound of the fridge door closing. The kitchen light was on, faintly visible under my door. I figured Kelsey was getting a snack, but when I got up the next morning, there was this strange smear on the counter, like something dark had been wiped up halfway. Coffee grounds, maybe? Or something else. I didn't think much of it. A few days later, I came home and noticed the lock on my bedroom door had been turned halfway, like someone had tried to open it but stopped. I didn't even remember locking it before I left, which was the strange part. My roommate wasn't home, so I let it go. Then one night, I woke up again around the same time. The apartment was dead quiet, except for the sound of the floor creaking in the living room. Slow, deliberate steps. I stared at my door, holding my breath. The steps paused for a second, then came closer. They stopped right outside my room. I reached for my phone and texted Kelsey. "Are you awake?" No reply. After about a minute, the steps moved away. I heard her bedroom door close. I sat awake until dawn. When I confronted her the next day, she looked genuinely confused. "No," she said, shaking her head. "I was asleep all night." She seemed calm, but I couldn't shake the feeling she was lying. There was just something about her eyes, steady, unblinking, like she was waiting for me to drop it. A few days later, I bought a small camera from Amazon. Just a cheap one. I set it up in my room facing the door and left it running while I was at work. That night, I checked the footage. Around 1:47 p.m., my door opened slightly, just enough for someone to peek in. The frame caught half of a face, Kelsey's, her eyes fixed on my bed. She didn't step inside. She just stood there for about 20 seconds, staring. Then she closed the door again. I froze. I must have watched that clip a dozen times, hoping I was seeing it wrong, but it was her. I confronted her again, this time more directly. "Kelsey, why were you in my room?" She looked surprised, but not scared. "I wasn't. I have video of you." She didn't even flinch. "No, you don't." That was it. No argument, no apology, just that. Then she walked past me and went into her room. After that, things escalated fast. I started locking my door every time I left, every time I went to sleep. I even shoved a chair under the handle some nights. Still, little things kept happening. My toothbrush would be wet when I hadn't used it. My clothes would be slightly rearranged in my drawers. Once, I found my hairbrush in the kitchen sink. I started spending more time out of the apartment, at the library, coffee shops, anywhere else. But I still had to come home to sleep, and every night I could feel her presence through the wall. I could hear her pacing, whispering sometimes, though I could never make out the words. One night, I decided to test something. I placed a strip of clear tape across my door frame, just a tiny piece that would break if anyone opened the door. I also left a glass of water balanced precariously on my desk near the edge. When I came home the next evening, the tape was snapped and the glass had spilled. She'd been in my room again. That was the moment I knew I needed to get out. I called my parents and told them I was moving back home for a while. I started packing that same night. Around 11 p.m., Kelsey came home from work. I heard her drop her bag on the counter. Then silence. After a moment, I heard her footsteps coming down the hall. She stopped outside my door. "What are you doing?" she asked. Her voice was flat, like she already knew. "I'm leaving," I said. "This isn't working out." There was a pause. Then in that same calm tone, she said, You shouldn't. I turned the lock on my door. She tried the handle. Kelsey, stop, I said. She jiggled the handle harder, then slammed her palm against the door once. The sound echoed through the room. I heard her breathing on the other side. Slow, heavy. Then she whispered, "You shouldn't leave me alone here." Her voice had this strange, hollow sound to it. After about a minute, she walked away. Her door shut quietly. I didn't sleep. I sat awake, waiting for morning. Every few minutes, I thought I heard her moving, but it might have been the pipes or the old building settling. When the sun came up, I grabbed my bag and laptop and got out of there. I stayed with a friend that night, but I still had to go back for the rest of my stuff. My friend offered to come with me, but I told her it was fine. I'd be quick. When I got back the next day, the door was unlocked. I knew I'd locked it before leaving. Inside, the apartment smelled wrong, like something damp and sour. Kelsey's door was open a crack. I called out her name, but she didn't answer. I didn't plan on talking to her. I just wanted to get my things and go, but curiosity got the better of me. I pushed her door open. Her room was almost empty. No clothes, no furniture, nothing but a bare mattress and a pile of blankets in the corner. The closet door was open, and inside was this small metal box sitting on the floor. I don't know why, but I opened it. Inside were little things, tiny, personal things that didn't belong to her. A pair of earrings, a used chapstick, a few strands of hair tied together with dental floss. A photo of me, printed, not digital, from the day I moved in. I was standing by my car, smiling. I don't even remember her taking that picture. There was something else, too, a notebook. I flipped through it quickly. It wasn't words, just page after page of tiny drawings. Faces. My face, over and over again, sometimes sleeping, sometimes with my eyes open. I dropped it and ran out of the room. When I got to the living room, I froze. All my stuff, the boxes I hadn't taken yet, was gone. The only thing left was my phone charger coiled neatly on the table. I bolted for the door, but when I grabbed the handle, it didn't move. She'd locked it from the outside somehow. Then I heard her voice, quiet, from somewhere near the kitchen. "I told you not to leave." I turned, heart pounding. She stepped out from behind the counter. Her clothes were dirty, like she'd been sleeping on the floor. Her hair was matted. But what scared me most were her eyes. They weren't angry, they were blank, empty. "You shouldn't leave," she said again, walking closer. I backed toward my room, keeping my eyes on her. "Kelsey, stop. Just stop." She tilted her head slightly, like she was studying me. Then she smiled, just barely. "I like it when you're here." My back hit the wall. She kept coming, one slow step at a time. I scanned the room for anything I could use, a lamp, a chair, something, but there was nothing close enough. Then she stopped. Her expression shifted, like something inside her flicked off. Without a word, she turned and walked back down the hallway into her room. I didn't move for a full minute. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely grip my phone. When I finally got through to 911, I told them I was trapped inside my apartment and that my roommate was unstable. By the time the cops arrived, she was gone. Her room was empty again. The window was open, the screen popped out. They searched the building, the alley behind it, everything. Nothing. I moved out that day. A week later, the landlord called to tell me they'd found the rest of my stuff dumped behind the building in a garbage bag. My clothes were soaked in something, bleach, maybe, and my shoes were cut up with scissors. I asked if they'd ever found Kelsey. He said she never existed in their system. There was no lease under that name, no payment history, nothing. The previous tenant had left 6 months before I moved in. I don't know who she really was, or how she got in. But every time I see someone who looks even a little like her, same short hair, same blank eyes, I feel that same chill in my chest. Like she's still around, waiting for me to move in somewhere new. When I first moved into the apartment, I didn't think twice about the roommate situation. The place was cheap, clean enough, and close to my job. The landlord said another tenant was already living there, a guy named Ryan. Quiet, keeps to himself, he said. Sounded perfect. When I met Ryan, something about him immediately felt off. Not creepy, just odd. He was polite, but his eyes never seemed to match the tone of his words. When I introduced myself, he just stared for a second too long before saying, "Yeah, good to meet you." His voice was soft, almost monotone. The apartment had 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a small kitchen. My room was down the short hall to the left, his to the right. He'd already been living there for about a year, judging by the worn carpet in front of his door and the fact that he had labels on every item in the fridge. "Please don't touch. Mine. Don't use." I figured he'd had bad roommates before. At first, things were fine. We didn't talk much. I worked long hours at a warehouse, and when I got home, I'd hear him moving around quietly in his room or sitting on the couch watching TV with the sound barely audible. But about a month in, I started noticing strange things. It started small, little noises in the night. I'd wake up around 3 a.m. to the faint sound of someone walking in the hall. At first, I thought it was him going to the bathroom. But the footsteps would stop right outside my door and just stay there. I'd lie there in the dark, staring at the thin line of light under the door, watching it disappear as a shadow blocked it out. Then, nothing. Just silence. The next morning, I'd ask him casually, "Hey, were you up last night?" He'd look at me with this blank expression and say, "No." One morning, I found a mug on the kitchen counter. It was filled halfway with water and a single spoon floating in it. Not dirty, just sitting there. Later, I realized it was my mug from my cabinet. I hadn't used it in days. Another night, I was watching TV in the living room when Ryan came out of his room. He stood in the hallway for a second, staring at me. His eyes looked glassy, unfocused. "You're up late," I said, trying to sound casual. He just said, "You shouldn't watch that one." I looked at the screen. It was an old movie, nothing scary or weird. "What do you mean?" He blinked slowly, like he was waking up from a dream. "That one." "I don't like it." Then he turned and went back into his room. That was the first time I noticed his door didn't close all the way. It always stayed open about an inch, no matter how quietly he moved inside. Sometimes when I passed by, I'd catch a glimpse of him standing in the middle of the room, facing the wall. Not doing anything, just standing there. One night, curiosity got the better of me. I leaned toward that small crack in his door, trying to see what he was doing. Inside, I could just barely make out the shape of his desk, and something that looked like photos taped to the wall above it. Rows of them. When I looked closer, my stomach dropped. They were pictures of me. Some of them looked like they'd been taken through my bedroom window. Others were close-ups, me leaving for work, me sitting on the couch, even one of me asleep. I stepped back so fast, I knocked into the wall. His room went silent. Then I heard him move. The sound of his bare feet across the carpet, coming closer to the door. I went straight to my room, locked the door, and sat there in the dark. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I decided I was done. I didn't care if I had to crash on a friend's couch. I wasn't staying there another night. But when I went into the kitchen to grab my stuff, Ryan was already there. He was sitting at the table, eating dry cereal from a bowl with his hands. His eyes flicked up at me as I entered. "Leaving?" he asked. I froze. "Yeah," I said carefully. "I got a new place." He chewed for a second, then said, "You shouldn't. It's better here." That's when I noticed something. On the counter behind him was my wallet. Open. My driver's license was on the table beside it. I stepped closer slowly. "Did you go through my stuff?" He looked down at the license, then back at me. "I just wanted to know where you were from." "Don't touch my things," I said, louder than I meant to. He smiled faintly. "You should lock your door better." That was enough. I grabbed my wallet, shoved it in my pocket, and left. I stayed with a friend that night and went back the next day with a buddy to get the rest of my stuff. The apartment was empty. I don't mean Ryan wasn't there. He was, but it was like he'd vanished. His door was open, his bed stripped, his closet empty. Everything he owned was gone, except for one thing, a small notebook lying on the kitchen counter. I shouldn't have looked inside, but I did. Each page had notes, dates, times, descriptions. He's home now. He's asleep. He watched TV for 2 hours. He looked through the window tonight. The last entry was dated that morning. He's going to leave. We called the landlord and the police, but no one could find him. There was no record of him under the name Ryan. The landlord swore he'd been living there for a year, but when they checked the paperwork, all they found were blank forms. No signature, no ID. I moved out that same week. A few nights later, I was staying at my new place. Second floor apartment, new locks, new everything. I was finally starting to feel safe again. Then, one night, I woke up to a noise. Not loud, just a soft creak like someone stepping on a floorboard. My window was open. I live on the second floor, so it didn't make sense. But there, on the windowsill, was a single muddy footprint. And taped to the glass, just above it, was a photo. It was me, taken through the window while I slept. When I moved into the new apartment last year, I thought it was the start of something good. I just turned 28, got promoted at my IT job, and found this quiet, affordable place right outside the city. The building was older, creaky floors, faded wallpaper, but I liked the character. The landlord said the second bedroom was already rented to a guy named Drew. Good tenant, he said. Been here a couple years. Keeps to himself. That was fine by me. I wasn't looking for a best friend, just someone who wouldn't throw parties or steal food. Drew was home when I moved in. He was tall, lean, with sharp features and blonde hair that looked like he'd cut it himself. When I introduced myself, he smiled, but it didn't feel natural, more like something he'd practiced. He helped me carry a few boxes inside, and when we were done, he asked if I needed anything. I said no. He nodded, smiled again, and went into his room. The door closed quietly, no slam, no sound at all. The place had 2 bedrooms on opposite ends of a narrow hallway, a small shared kitchen, and a living room that looked out onto the parking lot. His room was at the far end. I didn't go near it much. At first, everything was fine. We kept to ourselves. He worked at night, apparently in security, though he never said where. He'd leave around 8 p.m. and come back early in the morning, around 5 or 6. I worked normal hours, so we mostly passed each other in silence. But after a few weeks, I started noticing strange things. The first was the noise. Around 3 a.m. some nights, I'd wake up to faint sounds. Creaking floorboards, low scraping, sometimes the fridge door opening. The weird part was, Drew was supposed to be at work then. I'd get up and check, but by the time I stepped into the hall, everything was silent. The second thing was the smell. A few times, I came home to this faint metallic odor in the air. Not garbage, not food, something sharper, like rust or blood. It lingered near the kitchen sink. Drew would be sitting on the couch, staring at the blank TV, like nothing was wrong. When I'd ask if he noticed it, he'd shrug and say, "Old pipes." Then came the third thing, the missing stuff. It started with small things. A t-shirt I'd left folded on my bed disappeared. A razor from the bathroom cabinet. Then my spare phone charger. When I asked Drew if he'd seen them, he always gave the same answer. "No, man. Haven't seen it." But his tone changed one night when I pressed the issue. I'd come home late from work and noticed the charger I'd been missing plugged into the outlet behind the couch. Same model, same scratches. "Hey," I said, trying to sound calm, "is that mine?" He looked up from the couch, where he'd been scrolling through his phone. "No," he said, "it looks exactly like mine. I've been missing one for weeks." He stared for a second, eyes unreadable, then unplugged it slowly. "You can have it if you want." I didn't like the way he said it, flat, almost mocking. I just took it and went to my room. That night, I locked my door for the first time. Over the next few weeks, I started to notice how quiet he really was. Too quiet. When I'd pass by his room, I could hear nothing. Not typing, not music, not the TV, just complete silence. Once, when he left for work, I knocked on his door, pretending to have a question about the bills. No answer. I turned the handle. Locked. Curiosity got the better of me. A few days later, when he was gone, I checked the window from outside. His blinds were down, but there was a faint red light glowing through them, like from a dark room or a computer screen. I told myself it was none of my business. Then, one night, around 2 a.m., I woke to a sound I'll never forget. It was the creak of my bedroom door. I froze. I knew I'd locked it. I was sure of it. But now, I heard it moving, slowly, quietly. The latch clicked. My breath caught in my throat. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. No one was there. The door was open about 2 inches. I got up, hands shaking, and looked out into the hall. The apartment was dark, but I could just barely make out a shape near the kitchen. Someone was standing there, tall, thin, motionless. "Drew?" I said. My voice came out weak. The shape didn't move. "Drew?" I repeated, louder. He turned his head slightly, just enough for me to see the pale outline of his face in the dim light. Then he walked away, back toward his room, without saying a word. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I waited until he left for work. Then I checked my door. The lock was scratched around the keyhole, like someone had been trying to pick it. That was it. I started looking for a new place immediately. While I was searching, I bought a small motion camera and set it up on my dresser, facing the door. I didn't tell him. That night, I locked the door again and went to bed. When I checked the footage the next morning, my stomach dropped. At 3:17 a.m., my door opened. Drew walked in. He stood at the foot of my bed for nearly 2 full minutes, just staring. Then he walked to my desk, opened my drawers, and picked up my watch. He turned it over in his hand, set it back down, and left. I called out of work that day and went straight to the police. They said unless he'd stolen something or threatened me, there wasn't much they could do. Document it, they said. If it happens again, call us. That night, I double-locked the door and wedged a chair under the handle. At 4 a.m., I woke to the sound of metal scraping against metal. Someone was trying the lock again. The handle rattled once, twice, then stopped. Silence. I sat there, holding my phone, waiting for the sound of footsteps leaving. Instead, I heard breathing, right outside the door, deep, steady breaths. Then slowly a whisper. "You awake?" My heart hammered in my chest. I didn't answer. He tried the handle again, harder this time. The chair shifted slightly but held. "Go to bed," he whispered. Then footsteps, soft, retreating down the hall. I didn't move until sunrise. When I got up, I checked the door again. The scratches were worse now, deeper, jagged, like he'd used something sharp. I packed a bag, called my friend Mark, and asked if I could crash on his couch. Before I left, I wanted to grab one last thing, my laptop charger. It was on the kitchen counter. When I walked in, Drew was sitting at the table, eating cereal. He looked up at me, calm as ever. "Heading out?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. My voice shook. "I'll be gone for a bit." He nodded slowly. I figured. There was a long pause. He didn't look angry, just curious, like he was watching something he didn't fully understand. Then he said, "You shouldn't leave. It's not safe out there." Something in his tone made my stomach twist. I didn't answer. I grabbed my charger and left. I stayed with Mark for a week. I didn't go back once. Then one afternoon, I got a call from the landlord. "Hey," he said, "when are you coming to pick up your stuff?" "What do you mean?" I asked. I thought Drew was still there. There was a pause. "He's gone," the landlord said. "He moved out a few days ago, left no forwarding address." I went back that weekend with Mark to grab the rest of my boxes. The apartment felt wrong the moment we walked in. Quiet, cold, the air stale. My door was wide open. Inside, my bed was stripped bare, drawers emptied. Everything I'd left was gone, except for one thing. On the floor, in the middle of the room, was a small black USB drive. I plugged it into my laptop in the living room while Mark was checking the closets. There were 3 video files. Each was about 2 minutes long. The timestamps matched nights I'd been home. The first video was of me, asleep in bed. The camera angle was from above, like from the top corner of the room. The second was of me brushing my teeth, staring into the mirror. The third was the worst. It was taken from the doorway of my room. I was lying there asleep, and Drew was standing over me, holding something in his hand. The video ended before he moved. I threw up in the sink. We left immediately, and I gave the USB to the police. They said they'd investigate, but as far as I know, nothing came of it. Drew's name didn't match any records. The ID he'd given the landlord was fake.